Emily Rousseau sat in the back row of her own funeral wearing sunglasses and a black dress she'd bought at a thrift store 2 towns over. No one recognized her. Why would they? She was dead. Her mother stood at the podium crying. Her sister held their father's hand. Her husband, ex-husband now, she supposed, sat in the front row with his head down. The pastor spoke about loss and faith and God's mysterious plans. Then came the eulogies. And that's when Emily learned the truth. Not about how she died. About how she'd lived. Her best friend since college went first. She talked about Emily's kindness. Her generosity. How she always put others first. Then she said something that made Emily's blood go cold. She said, Emily gave everything to everyone. Sometimes I wondered if she even knew who she really was underneath all that people-pleasing. The crowd murmured in agreement. Emily's hand tightened around the edge of the pew. What was that supposed to mean? 6 months earlier, Emily had been driving home from a work conference in Sacramento. It was late. Raining. She'd pulled over at a scenic overlook to take a call. When she got back in her car, she noticed something. Her briefcase was open. Papers scattered. Someone had been inside her vehicle. She looked around. Empty parking lot. Dark trees. Rain hammering the windshield. Then she saw it. A manila envelope on her passenger seat that wasn't there before. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. Pictures of her. At the grocery store. Leaving her office. Having coffee with her sister. All taken over the past 3 months. No note. No explanation. Just surveillance. Emily called the police. They took a report. Said it was probably a stalker. Told her to be careful. Install security cameras. She did all of that. But 2 weeks later, she received a text from an unknown number. It said, "You're asking the wrong questions. Stop looking into Clearwater." Clearwater was the name of her father's company. The business that had funded her childhood. Her education. Everything. Emily started digging. Quietly. She'd been a financial analyst before she married and quit to support her husband's career. She knew how to read documents. Follow money trails. Her father's company, Clearwater Solutions, was a consulting firm specializing in environmental assessments. They helped corporations comply with EPA regulations. Clean image. Good reputation. But when Emily accessed the company files, she still had login credentials from when she'd worked their summers during college. She found something strange. Payments to shell companies. Invoices for services that didn't match any projects. Millions of dollars moving through accounts in the Cayman Islands. She confronted her father. He laughed it off. Said it was tax strategy. Completely legal. But his eyes told a different story. 3 days later, Emily's car went off a cliff. Except it wasn't an accident. Emily had planned it. She'd realized something terrifying. If she kept digging, someone would stop her. Permanently. So she stopped them first. She drove to the overlook. Left her phone and wallet in the car. And walked away. Emily had learned the technique from a true crime documentary. If you want to disappear, you need a body. Or the assumption of one. She drove her car to the overlook. Positioned it near the edge. Put a brick on the accelerator. Jumped out. The car went over. Crashed into the rocks 200 feet below. Burned. Police found it the next morning. No body, but the wreckage was catastrophic. Combined with her recent stalking reports, the assumption was clear. Emily Rousseau had either jumped or been forced off the road. Her family was devastated. Her husband gave tearful interviews. The police investigated but found no evidence of foul play. Just a tragic accident. After 6 months with no body recovered, the family decided to hold a memorial service. That's when Emily made her decision. She had to know. Had to hear what they'd say when they thought she couldn't hear them. So she came back. Disguised. Hidden. A ghost at her own funeral. After her best friend spoke, Emily's sister stood up. Rachel. They'd been close growing up. Shared a room until college. Emily expected tears. Memories. Maybe a funny story. Instead, Rachel talked about pressure. How Emily had always been the perfect daughter. The one who did everything right. Straight A's. Good marriage. No scandals. Rachel said, I think Emily spent her whole life trying to be what everyone else needed. And I wonder if that's why she was driving alone that night. If she was finally trying to find space to be herself. Emily felt her chest tighten. That wasn't true. Was it? Then her husband spoke. Michael. He'd been with her for 12 years. Married for 7. He talked about their early years. How happy they'd been. Then his voice broke. He said, the last year was hard. Emily pulled away. I thought it was stress from work. But now I think she was carrying something she couldn't tell me. And I'll never know what it was. The congregation nodded sympathetically. But Emily knew something they didn't. Michael was lying. 3 months before Emily disappeared, she'd found something on Michael's laptop. He'd left it open while he showered. An email exchange with her father. The subject line was, Clearwater, final payment schedule. Emily only read the first few lines before she heard the water shut off. But it was enough. Michael had been consulting for her father's company. For 2 years. And Emily had never known. When she'd asked her father about the shell companies, he'd acted surprised. But he wasn't. He knew exactly what was happening. Because Michael was helping him. That night, Emily pretended everything was normal. Made dinner. Asked about Michael's day. He mentioned a new client. Didn't mention Clearwater. She realized then that her husband had been lying to her for 2 years. Maybe longer. And her father had been using him. But for what? That's when she started finding the surveillance photos. That's when the threats began. The last person to speak was Emily's father. Gerald Rousseau. 72 years old. Silver hair. Distinguished. He walked slowly to the podium. Adjusted the microphone. Looked out at the crowd. His voice was steady. Too steady. He talked about Emily as a child. How curious she was. How she asked questions about everything. How she wanted to understand how things worked. Then he said something that made Emily's heart stop. He said, Emily inherited my analytical mind. But she also inherited my stubbornness. Once she latched onto something, she couldn't let it go. Even when letting go would have been smarter. The crowd thought it was a touching observation about his daughter's determination. But Emily heard the real message. He was talking about Clearwater. About her investigation. He knew. He'd known the whole time. And sitting there in that pew, Emily realized something horrifying. Her father hadn't just covered up financial fraud. He'd covered up her death. Or tried to. He thought she was actually dead. And he was relieved. After the service, Emily followed them to the reception. She stayed on the edges. Listened. Her mother talked about estate paperwork. Michael mentioned selling the house. Her sister asked about Emily's life insurance policy. No one talked about Emily. They talked about what Emily left behind. Money. Property. Complications. Then Emily overheard something. Her father and Michael, standing near the bar. Her father said, We'll need to finalize the Clearwater transition within 90 days. With Emily gone, there's no paper trail back to us. Michael nodded. What about the offshore accounts? Her father smiled. Untraceable. She was good, but not that good. Emily felt like she'd been punched. They weren't just hiding fraud. They were using her death to cover it up. Clearwater Solutions wasn't consulting. It was money laundering. For who? She didn't know yet. But her father and Michael had been using the company to move money for years. And when Emily started asking questions, they'd made her disappear. Except she hadn't disappeared. She'd escaped. Emily left the reception at sunset. Walked 6 blocks to where she'd parked a rental car under a fake name. She sat in the driver's seat. Hands shaking. She'd come to the funeral looking for closure. Instead, she'd found clarity. Her father was a criminal. Her husband was complicit. And they'd both been willing to let her die, or at least let the world believe she was dead, to protect themselves. Now Emily had a choice. She could disappear. Actually disappear. Take the new identity she'd built. Start over somewhere far away. Or she could come back. Expose them. Burn down everything they'd built. But there was a risk. If she revealed herself, she'd be admitting she faked her death. She could face legal consequences. And worse, they might actually kill her this time. Emily started the car. She didn't know what she was going to do yet. But she knew one thing. She wasn't the same person who'd driven off that cliff 6 months ago. That Emily had been afraid. Had wanted to please everyone. Had avoided conflict. This Emily was different. This Emily had attended her own funeral. And heard the truth. 6 weeks later, Gerald Rousseau received a package. No return address. Inside was a USB drive. When he plugged it in, he found financial records. Every transaction. Every shell company. Every offshore account. Documented. Organized. Annotated. And a note that said, "You taught me to ask questions. I found the answers. You have 48 hours to turn yourself in. Or I release this to the FBI, the SEC, and every major news outlet in the country. Love, your daughter who asks too many questions." Gerald called Michael immediately. Told him Emily was alive. Michael didn't believe him at first. Then the panic set in. They had 2 days. 2 days to figure out if the threat was real. 2 days to decide if they'd sacrifice themselves or call her bluff. But here's what they didn't know. Emily wasn't bluffing. And she wasn't alone anymore. She'd found 5 other families. 5 other people whose lives had been destroyed by Clearwater Solutions. People who'd lost everything while her father got rich. They were ready to testify. Ready to expose everything. Emily Rousseau had attended her own funeral. Heard what people really thought of her. Learned who she'd really been. And now, she was becoming someone else. Someone who didn't disappear. Someone who fought back.